Welcome to News 24's election updates. We are some weeks away from a very interesting election. We're joined today by the leader of the Freedom Front Plus, Pieter Groenewald, MP. Pieter, thank you very much for joining us at News 24 in Johannesburg.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Pieter, let's start with your party. It's known as one of the most active parties in Parliament. What have been the highlights for your party the last 5 years before we dive into this election campaign?
Well, if you look at the highlights, firstly, we got a new president from Cyril Ramaphosa, although a bit later. But for instance, I've put a lot of emphasis on the rights of minorities. I've put quite a lot of emphasis on Afrikaans. Not because that we say that we're against English, but we believe in real multilingualism. And we say that all languages should be treated equal in South Africa, the same with minorities' rights. And by that I mean, I very strongly put forward the whole aspect of affirmative action, where I said throughout these 5 years that the time has come that we must stop affirmative action. It's like a sunset clause. Yeah. We are 25 years in democracy, therefore I can put that on the table. And I think that is quite a lot of highlights, because there are some other minor issues where I think that we did have success, specifically when it comes to policing. But to answer your question, that it is.
If you look at those issues that you raised, minority rights, language rights, affirmative action, where did the Freedom Front Plus over the last 5 years show impact on those issues in Parliament, or where you have insight into what is happening in the government and in the state?
Well, firstly, just to put it on the table, let the government think twice on the issue. We also say that you must raise the issues so that the people of South Africa can also see that it is still of interest. I mean, if you don't put it on the table, then the public and the electorate will say, but what is the use to have a political party and the real issues are just disappearing? It's not on the agenda. To put it more simple, you can only score a goal if you're on the field and not on the pavilion. And if you say specific issues, let's take for instance my private members bill on firearms. I've put forward a members bill. It was almost accepted, but what was interesting, that all the members, even the ANC members, agreed that the principles in the members bill is acceptable. But they said that they will address it after the 8th May election. Therefore, that is a specific issue where I said that we have to address the issue where the renewal of firearms licenses has expired, which at this moment is still in limbo. We don't know what's going to happen. To give you one example.
One, I suppose, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but one issue that you raised now, which I suppose you've been hearing on the campaign trail, and which is a very big issue for your target market in the voters market, is affirmative action. How has, in your mind, in your party's position, how has affirmative action been implemented over the last 25 years? Where has it gone wrong? And how would you reform that? Do you think it's still necessary to have affirmative action?
No, we're on record to say that we can abolish it in total. And let me give some examples. For instance, where it went wrong is that the government party has misused affirmative action to do cadre deployment. They did not look at whether, when it comes to affirmative action, whether the person was qualified and able to do the job. They just did people who was politically correctly connected in certain manager positions. And that is where it completely went wrong. That means that affirmative action actually ensured that you had incompetent people. And let's take an example. Let's take Eskom. I've asked in Parliament the question, and the minister said, and the answer was that since from 1994 to 2005, 10,500 white engineers left the service of Eskom. It was expertise. Now by that I don't say that there are black engineers now who does not have the expertise. Of course they have. But it was a mass exit of expertise that left Eskom. And we are paying the price. I had a situation where a black engineer said to me, you know, I'm an engineer working with Eskom. My manager, he hasn't got the qualifications, but he was politically correctly connected. And when I told him to do certain things, he said, don't you tell me what to do. And therefore, if you look at the research at the moment, at the last couple of years, more black professionals are leaving South Africa. Why? Not only, but a major role played by affirmative action.
Do you think we've moved, we've done enough after 1994 to try and level the playing field, given the backlog and the situation that we had before 1994? Is the playing field level enough so that everyone can compete on equal footing?
I think it is. For instance, if you go and look at our universities, 3 times more black students are graduating annually than white students, for instance. So then you're on an equal basis. So as far as the Freedom Front Plus is concerned, we say the playing fields are leveled now. So get the person with the best qualification with the best expertise to do the job. And that's why we say there should only be one criteria, and that is merit. There are enough people that can reflect the racial situation in South Africa that can ensure that there is not discriminated against some other group or not.
So what you've picked up over the last couple of weeks, I suppose, crisscrossing the country, trying to convince people to vote for your party, is amongst your target market, it's minority rights, language issues, affirmative action. Are those the biggest issues, or are there other issues that you've picked up in your travels across the country?
You can also add black economic empowerment. Even black voters comes to me and say, listen, we've got a problem. Because I always say that it's not black economic empowerment, it is black elite enrichment. And they say, you're quite right, because we don't see the results that it benefited the poor of South Africa. And
you should read Pieter Groenewald's book about that.
You can go further. Well, you can even read R.W. Johnson's the latest publication of Fight for the Dream. And you will see what happened. Therefore, if you say those issues, it's really very, can I say, matters that the voters of South Africa say, if we want to build South Africa, if we want to ensure a better future, because that's also what the Freedom Front Plus say, we must stop fighting for a better past, we must start fighting for a better future. They say, if you address those issues, and of course I can bring in expropriation without compensation. I mean, the Freedom Front Plus got a practical, can I say, a plan and proposals to build the economy of South Africa, because we say unemployment is the crisis of South Africa, of the other many crises, and the only way you can address unemployment is to build the economy. Now, all the political parties say, yes, we must build the economy. We have specific proposals how to build the economy, and part of that is to abolish black economic empowerment, abolish affirmative action, and, for instance, stop expropriation without compensation.
You're in Parliament. You're there every week. That's where you live, and that's where you live in Northwest, but that's where you work most of the time. Will this constitutional amendment go through to enable expropriation without compensation? How do you see that process evolving?
Depending on what is going to happen after the 8th May election, they do need a 2/3 majority to amend the constitution. There's no doubt about that. And if they get partners, the ANC on its own won't get a 2/3 majority, but if they get partners to ensure and support them, then there's no doubt in my mind that they will amend Section 25 of the Constitution. People are sometimes in a state of denial. They think it cannot happen. I am convinced that if they are in a position to do it, they will do it.
Pieter, let's talk about your party in 1994 when it was formed. In those tumultuous years, it almost garnered 500,000 votes. After that, it hovered around 127, reaching 165,000 votes in 2014. So there's been a gradual uptick in your support over the last couple of elections. Why is that so? And what are your prospects for this election? What does your gut tell you could happen come May the 8th?
Yes. As you said, in 1994, let's take around about 500,000 votes. In 1999, we had a huge decrease in our supporters. The reasons are as follows. Firstly, people believed that South Africa is in the new paradise, the Rainbow Nation, and people became anti-political sort of...
It was this apathy amongst voters.
Apathy, you can call it an apathy, to say, I don't need to go and vote.
And my vote won't do anything.
It won't make a difference. Well, why do I have to go and vote? I'm pleased with what is happening in South Africa. And then you must also remember that the proportional electoral system, if opposition people don't go and vote, they strengthen the governing party. So that is one reason. The other one is also that Tony Leon, with his slogan of fight back, was well received.
Let's talk about your slogan now.
Yes,
is it similar to that, fight back, slaan terug?
Of course, it's exactly the same. But I also say that in every political situation in any country, there are numerous situations and times when the voters must fight back with their crosses. And if there was ever a time in politics in South Africa, it is this time with this election. And by the way, even a DA told me to say, well, it sounds better if Pieter Groenewald says slaan terug than Tony Leon that said slaan terug. So
has that message been received well?
Very well.
Has there been opposition to it though, but has there been criticism as well over what might be perceived as an incitement to violence?
Yes, of course you will get that criticism. It was also the criticism in 1999 against Tony Leon.
And it worked for Leon, didn't it?
Of course. Well, the reason why I, as a leader, said that I want that slogan is wherever I spoke to the electorate, they said, and specifically our supporters said, well, it's time that we have to fight back to ensure that we get real equal rights in South Africa. And that's why I decided to say I'm going to use the slogan, fight back. And of course, I know the criticism is to say, but it incites violence, it's divisive and all that sort of thing. It's a political slogan, and you only fight back with your cross.
Let's unpack that a little bit. Fight back against what? Fight back against government, fight back against the ANC, fight back against the transition. What should the electorate fight back if they listen to your vote?
Well, firstly, we say fight back against expropriation of compensation. Fight back against the crime situation in South Africa. Fight back against discrimination in South Africa, which includes affirmative action, because it's racism as far as I'm concerned. Fight back against poor service delivery. Fight back against corruption. Fight back and ensure that we try to ensure that the ANC is not the government. It's as simple as that.
You spoke about Tony Leon, you spoke about the success of his 99 campaign, which consolidated the minority vote, the white vote especially. It took lots of votes away from the National Party, also from the Freedom Front Plus. Anecdotal evidence suggests that the Freedom Front Plus this election might expect a windfall from disgruntled white DA supporters. Is that what you are picking up? And if so, why is that happening?
Well, you're quite right. We are picking it up. I mean, I receive telephone calls, messages almost daily to say we've previously voted for the DA, now we're going to vote for the Freedom Front Plus. Our officers, our campaign people say that to us, so there's no doubt about it. And I mean, even if you look at the opinion polls, the Freedom Front Plus at this moment is one of the big 5 parties in South Africa. So we say surely, and the reason is quite simple. People are fed up with the situation, to say, specifically when it comes to white people, to be accused that everything that goes wrong is because of white people. The so-called white capital as well. I mean, to say that you don't have land because white people have stolen the land. There's not economic growth because of white capital. all those allegations made by the ANC and the polarization created by the ANC, people are fed up with that. And it started with Thabo Mbeki. Thabo Mbeki's first State of the Nation address started polarization. He referred to the two nations. We are still two nations, one white and rich, one black and poor. And furthermore, it was also created the impression to say, you as black people are poor because of the white people who are rich.
But is that not still the case? That broadly speaking, the majority of poor people in this country are black, and they don't have the opportunities that I suppose that privileged white people do have.
Well, we say that it's 25 years after 1994. How long do you want to use that as excuse? I say it's not, because the reason why so many blacks are still poor is because it was not black economic empowerment, it was black elite enrichment. Why didn't they create jobs for that? The other reason is it's the government, and only the government, who must take responsibility for the fact that the economy does not grow because of black economic empowerment. I mean, which person will come forward, or an investor to come and invest in South Africa if you have to ensure black economic empowerment, affirmative action, and now you can even add expropriation without compensation. Even if you talk to local business people, for instance, they've got a lot of cash, and Cyril Ramaphosa said he wants to unlock that cash so that we have development in South Africa. Why don't they unlock it? Because if you've got a lot of money to invest, you will think twice, because you don't have certainty about the future of South Africa. So therefore, do not blame. Of course, if you go on figures and numbers, there are more black people who are poor. It's true. But we must also say to each other that you also get many more white people who are really poor, who are living in squatter camps. That is also a reality and the truth. We say, and I've just referred to it when I referred, for instance, to affirmative action, there are 3 times more black students graduating than white students. So why do we still have to go back to that? Let's stand together, get the best people to come build South Africa.
Are you picking up, listening to you, it definitely sounds like you are picking up increased frustration amongst white South Africans with things like affirmative action, etc., etc. Is that what you're trying to consolidate, this white unhappiness with perceived unhappiness with what's going on in the country?
There's no doubt about it that people are frustrated because of that. Because the people say, listen.
Are white voters more frustrated though than 5 years ago?
Of course. Because they say, listen, we want to build South Africa. Even if you go and look at the preamble of South Africa's constitution, it says, we honor those who've built South Africa in the past. They still want to build South Africa. But now they say, but now I'm becoming the scapegoat of the failures of the government. And of course they're frustrated of that. But then we say that some political party must be a voice in Parliament to say to the ANC and the governing party, people want to build South Africa. Stop making the white people of South Africa the scapegoats.
You work in Parliament, you sit across the ANC's caucus every single day when the House sits, work with them in committee. You know Cyril Ramaphosa as well, you knew all his predecessors too. Do you have any hope, or do you see Cyril Ramaphosa, given the constraints within which he is working in the ANC, being able to turn the party around? The strong reformist drive that he is leading, do you see that happening, or can't you see it happening, given someone like Ace Magashule being the Secretary General of the party, for example?
If we look what is happening now, unfortunately, he failed in addressing the real issues. I once said that I think Cyril Ramaphosa is actually now captured by the Zuma faction in the ANC, because he cannot do what he wishes to do. He may have the good intentions to do that, but let's just take his cabinet. When he announced his new cabinet after he became the president, all the bad apples are still there. He could not remove them. There are numerous, let's take for instance, expropriation without compensation. Cyril Ramaphosa waited till 10 o'clock one evening by the end of June, announcing that the ANC decided that they will amend Section 25 of the
Using the
Constitution.
SABC to do the announcement as well.
Exactly. So I said, well, it's now quite clear. At night, Cyril Ramaphosa is the president of the ANC. At day, he's the president of South Africa. Cyril Ramaphosa once said in public that he will do anything to ensure the unity in the ANC. That means that he thinks that the ANC's interests are more important than the interests of the country, which is not acceptable when you're the president. The most important issues are the issues of the people of South Africa. And he will not be able to solve the problem. We will see what happens after the election. I have the opinion that we're not going to have a big change. There are even gossip to say we will have to see whether Cyril Ramaphosa survives this year as president. The Zuma faction, as far as I'm concerned, is still too strong in the ANC. Even if you go and look at the candidate lists, they have ensured that the Zuma supporters are now on the list. And, you know, for instance, let's go back to September in 2018, no, 2017. There was also a motion from the EFF on the amendment of Section 25. It was rejected by the ANC caucus under Zuma. But then in 2018, under Cyril Ramaphosa, then suddenly, and it was almost a similar motion was then accepted.
Because they're fearful of the EFF. Pieter, lastly, why should, if you can make a pitch to News 24's viewers today and our millions of readers, why should people vote for you and the Freedom Front Plus?
Well, firstly, we say, if you believe in Christian principles, if you believe that minorities also have equal rights in South Africa, if you believe that we must ensure that the economy must grow, if you believe that we must seriously address the crime situation in South Africa, then we say if you vote for the Freedom Front Plus, we have practical proposals how we can solve the problems. And if you believe that we must stop fighting for the better past, but fight for a better future where we are all equal and equal treated, then you can vote for the Freedom Front Plus.
And fight back as well.
And fight back.
Pieter Groenewald, thank you very much for visiting us at News 24 in Johannesburg. We'll be back with more leaders of political parties over the next couple of days. Check in with News 24 whenever you can.